So I think what makes sex work different than other industries in which there are, in which there's intimacy, in which there's pleasure, and even industries separate from those that involve physical labor and even proximity to risk, physical risk, is that in contrast to those industries, sex work is criminalized. And that plays a huge role in how the labor is done and how the labor is respected, and who gets to do it safely, and what the implications are for everybody involved.
Sure.
It's a criminalized form of labor. And when people talk about the inherent risks or dangers with sex work, there is no inherent danger in exchanging sexuality for money. But there is an inherent danger and risk that is imposed upon the industry by laws and policies that make it impossible for sex workers to access justice.
Right, right. And I'm totally on board with that argument. And actually, you know what? We should just discuss the argument so that anyone who's not on board with the argument, because to me that seemed like, as I was watching the show, I'm philosophically at a place where I'm like, well, then obviously the criminalization of it is going to make that like inherently more risky, just like any other service industry job. If it is criminalized, it's going to make it more risky. It's going to make you more susceptible to human trafficking. It's going to make you more susceptible to, not being actually remunerated for your work, to slavery, basically, to people who are taken advantage. So, okay, so let's talk about how criminalization has made, what is it about the criminalization of the industry that makes it inherently more coercive? Like, it's not inherently more coercive and exploitative than other forms of labor, in my opinion. But what is it about criminalization that makes it, that puts it in a position of suddenly becoming coercive and exploitative?
So when our work is governed by criminal law and not labor law, it means we don't have access to occupational health and safety. Our work is not legitimized. It's not considered real work. We don't have the ability to effectively organize and unionize and fight for better labor rights. Under criminalization, we don't have access to the same rights as other workers. And that plays a massive role in how the job gets done and how sex workers are treated. I'm in Canada, and so the conditions for engaging in sex work are a little different than in most of the United States, where sex work is fully criminalized. There are little pockets of the United States, like Nevada, where sex work is legalized. In the Canadian context, we have what is called the Nordic model, which purports that all sex workers are victims and all clients, all people who pay for sexual services are essentially violent offenders. And it criminalizes the client under the guise that sex workers should be able to go to the police if something happens to them. That technically being a sex worker is not criminalized. However, in Canada, the laws are very twisted, which means that, sex workers aren't allowed to advertise. We're not allowed to have essentially conversations with our customers about what we allow and what we don't allow. We're not allowed to hire security. And we're not allowed to work together indoors. We're also not allowed to work outside. But technically, it is legal for us to accept the money for the sexual service. But otherwise, it's impossible to actually engage in sex work legally. And so in that context, the Nordic model, which is, in place in lots of places around the world, it has the same impact as fully criminalizing our labor. It doesn't actually keep us safe, and it in fact continues to perpetuate our victimhood to be legally defined as victims. In the United States, where it's mostly fully criminalized, sex workers run the risk of being arrested, going to jail for engaging in this form of labor, as do the clientele, but usually it's the sex worker who faces that reality. Depending on the type of sex work you're doing, people who work in massage parlors who are, oftentimes racialized immigrants. We know what the context is in the United States right now against people of color, especially sex workers who are in vulnerable positions. There's a lot of exploitation that can happen in a criminalized context. Mm-hmm. Whereas if the work is decriminalized, sex workers actually have the ability to go to the cops if something actually happens without being worried that they're going to be arrested themselves when something happens to them. And we can look to New Zealand as our shining beacon of light, because they've had sex work decriminalized nationally for over 20 years now. And they're an excellent case study. I think often of one particular case where a woman who worked at a brothel was being sexually harassed by her boss. And so she took him to the Human Rights Tribunal there, because nobody should be sexually harassed in the workplace, period. And she won that case. She won that case in New Zealand because sex work is considered real work, and sexual harassment in the workplace shouldn't happen whether or not sexual activity takes place in your workplace.